We went to camp. There were only 3 sailors there, and Chataway, Ron Crick and myself, and we had 150 in the camp, 1 Dutch officer. We had 1 doctor, Dr. Higgins, and Cyclops they called him. And
oh yes, yeah, he was from the Burma end.
Yeah, and we.
Well, that was the same camp as Neil McPherson, was he?
Yeah, I was his second judge. I was his medical orderly.
Right.
And but they had no medical orderlies.
Yeah.
So I think it's because of my age that they seconded me as a medical orderly, and I virtually ran the hospital. And then a crowd came from Manila with Dr. Goodman, an American doctor, and they were louse-bitten in a really shocking state. And that's where we stayed until the end of the war.
And we just discussed that John Higgins, Captain John Higgins, was your medical officer
in Japan.
And the name of that camp, if you know.
24.
Yes. Camp
24, Fukuoka district.
Yes, yeah. And did you stay in that? Or what were the conditions like in that camp, and what work were you doing?
Well, it was a coal mining camp.
Yeah.
But from day one, I was seconded to be outsider to Cyclops.
Yes, yeah.
And so we were in that camp for about 9 months.
Yes.
Till the end of the war.
Ah, you were there the whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, do you remember the day when the war was over?
Yes, I do, because the Japs, you've heard the story many times, they all left overnight, and we were just in the camp on our own, and the camp commandant didn't leave, and he announced to us that a peace treaty was being declared, and in other words, we were still under the auspices of the Japanese army. So the army boys, what they did, they came up to me and got some bloody mercurochrome, and they produced a bloody Australian flag, and they went round to where the guards were. There were no guards, they'd all gone, and we just put up the flag, and the camp commandant, we gave him a job in the cookhouse doing bloody slice work in the cookhouse. And then at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, no, at about midday, a B-22, a B-27 flew over and said that the war is over, peace has been declared, and you stay where you are until such times as we contact you. And they, which we did, and they're the things they dropped from the air, if they're any use to. So at 4 o'clock they came by and they dropped all the supplies, and we had a funny thing. You'd pay rations for food, and they didn't. The boys, after 3 or 4 days, got bloody crook, and they all went back to rice again.
Yes. And how did you get home?
We seconded a train. After about 6 weeks, we seconded a train through the people off the railway station in this little village where we were, and told the guard and the fireman and the driver that we wanted to go to Nagasaki. So they took us to Nagasaki, and we went through. I don't think it would be the heart of Nagasaki, but what we went through was very badly. There was no debris or anything else at all. Everything had disintegrated. And in the interim there, that the Americans had put up big godowns, and from there we were in American uniforms dropped from the aeroplanes. Then they took us there and fumigated us, and then they had a store mart thing with open trestles around. You go around, gave you a marble bag, and you got toothbrush, toothpaste and things that safe and personal items, and then they put us into Jungle Greens and boarded us on the Shenango, an aircraft carrier, and there was no room for a lot of people on. They just bulldozed planes into the harbour, the Americans, and we were in the harbour quite a few days because of a cyclone coming, and they got the all clear of the cyclone, but it was pretty bloody rough, and we went to Okinawa, and we landed at Okinawa Island, and there were just army huts there, and a big landing strip there, and the following day you're bundled into DC-2s, and they had garden seats in the DC-2s, and they flew us to Manila. And Manila we went into an enormous big circus tents we were put into, and it's there that they asked me if everyone, if any war criminal act. So I had a complaint about the doctors and the staff, the Jap staff, and so I gave a affidavit which is in there, and they flew me home to Darwin. I was in Darwin Naval Depot for a couple of days, and then they took me out to see a ship come in with from Burma or India or wherever it was, and I went in naval shorts. They'd rigged me up into navy gear by this time. I had more uniforms than the Salvation Army back, and anyway, I went out in the whaler and out to the Pinnace, out to the ship, and I came back without a bloody one stitch of navy clothes. Every person boy in the bloody ship came down. They wanted to know about the Jap fellas, you know. And so then I got kitted out again, and then they flew me to Archerfield, and from there we never had a medical inspection at all. Shocking, but yeah. So it just left. One bloke went to Sydney, and we'd never seen a woman in uniform, a major in the army in Darwin, and she sent every Sydney bloke to Brisbane and every Brisbane bloke to Sydney. Yeah. And there was a fellow named Seth Ramelli. He was an Australian halfback in the 1939 tour that never played, and he was a bombardier, and bombardier Seth Ramelli. And Ram said to me, "Goodbye, Bombardier Ramelli." I said, "Goodbye, Able Seaman Goodchap." And he went to me, and I went to he, and he got to Sydney, and I got to Brisbane.
Ah.
Yeah. And,
now I've got a couple of difficult questions for each of you. I'll start with you, Charlie. Would you be prepared to tell me what you consider to be the worst experience that you had as a POW?
As a POW?
Yeah, either personally or what you saw.
Yeah, that's a hard one, that one. Actually, in most, generally, if you just kept working and keeping out of trouble,